Enrichment, Enlightenment, Transformation. Rabbi Yisroel Cutler, the spiritual leader of Chabad of Cary, North Carolina, guides anyone who has been searching for a meaningful life and conscious living. Join our discussions about the mundane, our daily activities, and then infuse every day with a spiritual twist from the inspired sages of the Talmud and Jewish mysticism, which many call Kabbalah. We learn from the root source of all religious monotheistic traditions and delve into the symbolism and levels of meaning from biblical stories.
Everyone, good morning to the people here in the room, as well as anyone who might be listening from all over. Debbie, if you are listening, let us know. We would love your participation.
It's
good to be back.
She's
Sorry
listening.
we were not here last week. Today's December 6th, 2016. The Parsha of the week is Vayetse. And this is the Parsha in which we begin discussing the patriarch Jacob. Jacob has the most about him out of all the patriarchs. We got 6 Torah portions dedicated to his life. And one of the most vivid, moving dreams of the entire Torah is at the beginning of this week's Torah portion. We're going to analyze that dream today. So let's begin right from the beginning. Verse 10.
Oh, okay. And Jacob left Beersheba and he went to Haran.
Beersheba is in Israel. The city is still around today. I love it when you see in the Torah, thousands of years ago, names of cities that are still there today. Mm-hmm. Jacob left Israel. He left Beersheba. He left his mother and father's home, and he traveled outside of Israel. Why? 2 reasons. He had a brother that wanted to kill him. Just that, minor issue. And he was looking for a spouse. So he leaves Israel. Continue.
And he arrived at the place and lodged there because the sun had set. And he took some of the stones of the place and placed them at his head. And he lay down in that place. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the ground, and its top reached to heaven. And behold, angels of God were ascending and descending upon it.
This is probably one of the most mystical texts in the actual scriptures, in the actual Torah. What do we have in the Torah itself? This isn't Kabbalah, this isn't the Zohar. We have a ladder. 1 foot of the ladder is on the ground. The other foot of the ladder, it is in the heavens. And he sees malachim, which are angels, going up and going down. And that is his dream. Right afterwards, he gets a reassurance from God, I'm going to take care of you. He needs assurance at that point because he's homeless. He's running away for his life. He has no money, nothing. He's running for his life, but he has this powerful dream. And this dream is one of the metaphors that's used all over the place for what? Prayer. Tefillah. Prayer, that when we pray, what is prayer? Prayer is a ladder. A ladder where one side of it is down here, reaching God above. That is what prayer is. So a lot of times in Christian artwork, you'll see it like paintings of this Jacob's ladder, Jacob's dream. We don't very often in Jewish tradition have so much of that, but it's a beautiful imagery. If you think of it, we have a ladder, 1 foot here, 1 foot at the top of it in the sky, and angels going up and down.
That's Jacob's connection to God.
Correct. Yeah. That's his connection to God as is portrayed in this ladder. Now, one of the reasons why this is a metaphor for prayer is an obvious question. If you had a dream and you were dreaming of angels, what direction should the angels be going?
Up, down.
Down and up,
Yes.
not up and down. Mm-hmm. See the question? Behold, angels of God were ascending and descending on it. It should first be descending and then ascending. All right? Now, there is a simple answer, a more literal answer that Rashi gives. And I'll just say that parenthetical. I don't know if anyone knows that. Rashi discusses that when he left Israel, his guardian angels, his protective shield left, and he got a new brigade of messengers. So who went up? His protection from the land of Israel, and now because the land of Israel has a special shield around it. That's Rashi's. But the more mystical answer is, prayer is a time when we connect to God. What happens when we connect to God? We send energy going up, and what comes down? Brachas, blessings. Angels angels are spiritual energy, malachim. It doesn't just mean, a lot of times we understand angels to mean something that's not Jewish, from other religion.
Mm-hmm.
Angels can be spiritual energy. Hashem sends his blessings to the world via all of these rays. So Jacob has a dream. And a metaphor for prayer is every single time we pray, what are we doing? We're shooting up energy. And what's raining down on us? Brachos. Okay. So this is a very powerful verse. And the Talmud tells us that one of the reasons why this is a metaphor for prayer is because before Jacob went to sleep, what did he do? He prayed. So the dream that he had followed right after a prayer that he had. Skip the next. We'll go back to that in a moment. But please read the history. Yes. Oh. Read the next thing where it says the history of prayer, the timing. Yeah.
Kabbalistically?
Skip that next. We're going to go back to that in a moment.
The purpose of descent?
The history of prayer, that next section.
Sorry.
The timing of the prayers and the patriarchs.
Okay,
Yes.
the timing of the prayers of the patriarchs. It has been stated, Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi
Hanina said
that
tefillas, the prayers,
were instituted by the patriarchs. Rabbi Yehoshua, son of Levi, says the tefillas were instituted to replace the daily sacrifices.
Stop there for a moment. We have an argument in the Talmud. The Talmud says, why are there certain times a day we pray? One opinion is to model after the patriarchs. The other opinion in the Talmud says to model after the times when they used to bring sacrifices. Keep on reading.
It has been taught in accordance with Yoshi, son of Rabbi Shekhinah.
Yeah.
Abraham instituted the morning tefillah as it says, Abraham woke up early to go to the place where he had Ahmad stood. And standing means only prayer, as it says, then Pinchas stood up and prayed.
Let me explain what's going on here. The Talmud is using a verse by both Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that shows that each one invented one of the prayers. So Abraham invented which prayer? The morning. How do we see this? There's a verse in Genesis that says he woke up early in the morning to go to the place to stand. It doesn't say what he was doing over there. He went there to stand. And then it brings another proof elsewhere in Psalms where the word standing is associated with none other than prayer. Next example.
Isaac instituted the afternoon tefillah, as it says.
Yitzchak
Yitzchak went out
Lasuach
to meditate in the field at dusk. And meditation means only prayer, as it says, a prayer of the afflicted when he faints and pours out his meditation before the Lord.
Okay. Just to give some context, when did Abraham stand up and pray? It was shortly after he was told the news that he was going to have a child. When did Yitzchak go out to meditate in the field, the verse says? This was right before he met his wife, actually. He says he went out in the field, and then his wife came, which you asked about earlier, Pam. His wife, his young bride came. But in any event, we'll save that question for later. He went out to the field to do what? Meditate, since once they were meditating. Prayer. And finally, what's important to our text here, Jacob.
Jacob instituted the evening prayer, as it says, when he, Yaakov, reached a certain place, he
Vayipga, he stopped for the night. That was our original text. The other translation we had was he arrived at the place, but literally it means he stopped at that place. Keep on reading.
And pagia means only prayer, as it says, therefore pray not for this people, neither lift up prayer nor cry for them, neither make intercession to
Them, which is the same word tifka. Okay, so the Talmud gives 3 verses. And in each verse, it chooses, it wants to make an association between one of the 3 daily prayers and the prayers that are said today. But let me take a step back. We've discussed this idea before. I think it's really important to highlight that originally in biblical times, what did it mean to pray? What was the text of prayer in biblical times? No text whatsoever. Prayer was just a heartfelt connection to God when you felt it. That is what prayer always was biblically. It was only much later when the sages instituted the Amidah, and they did it at certain times of the day. And when they did that, they said, hey, we're not making up anything new. This was an old Jewish tradition. One of them attributed it to the patriarchs, and the other attributed towards the times of day that they offered the offerings in the temple.
So
But
it's only
yes,
2,000 years or so?
the Amidah is about 2,000 years old. Correct. A little more. 2,300 years old, I would say.
Yeah, because in the time of the sacrifices, they didn't have prayer.
Which temple?
The second temple.
In the time of the second temple, prayer was already starting.
Really? So they had sacrifices and prayer.
Alongside, absolutely.
But was it like a text, or was it still like communicating?
So
with
we're
God
going
like
to
in
have that in a moment. In a moment, we're going to have the text from Maimonides. But let's go back to our text here. So Jacob is leaving for the night. That's fine. Jacob is all alone. He stops for the night. He prays. And right afterwards, he has this incredible dream, this vision. And that is supposed to be a model for our prayer today. Our prayers go up. Our blessings come down. And a lot of times people ask the question, how come my prayer wasn't answered? Right? It's a question people ask often. And one of the answers I've often heard is, God hears every prayer. Sometimes the answer is no. I've heard that. Anyone heard that line before? It never touched me. I never liked that. I never liked that so much. What this sentence here says, every true prayer has 2 things. There's something that goes up and there's something that goes down. That happens every single time. Every time, if it's a true heartfelt prayer. Now, what might not happen is what comes down is not necessarily what we asked for. The blessings that come down is not in the manner that we were hoping for. The energy that comes down is not in the physical, concrete, specific bracha that we asked for. It's something else. But I believe every heartfelt prayer achieves something. And that is the Jacob's ladder. There's energy going up and there's energy going down. It does something to you. It does something to the world. It does something in some manner to the person you daven for. Perhaps not in the way that we want it to. We say that after the fact, of course. But every single prayer has this going up and going down. Kabbalistically, Hal, why don't you read this? Kabbalistically, the ladder. It's on the first page.
Okay. Want you to know Thursday night there's going to be a teaching just on verse 10.
You're continuing the
What?
Thursday?
No, this will be it. I was
The
invited
TBO.
to TBO.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Kabbalistically, this ladder, or
Sulam is how you say a ladder in Hebrew.
represents the ladder worlds. The Siddur
Hishtalshelut, which are all the spiritual worlds. Yeah.
is the connection between God and the ethereal with our physical world. The conceptual ladder suggests that one may both ascend and descend. The purpose of ascent is to gain a high perspective, a view from above. The purpose of descent is to fulfill the purpose in creation. In fact, both are essential. Only when one ascends the ladder of creation does one perceive true reality, allowing a sharper, more focused perspective upon re-entry into earthly spheres.
Hold it there. This is deep, but this is neat. What is davening about? Being able to look at the world from a higher perspective. When we pray, we look at the world and it's a lot of fragments, fragmented. It's a crazy world. There's a lot of negativity in the world. We can get stuck up with the veneer of the world. And sometimes when you're on the airplane This is not a good metaphor. And all of a sudden, everything looks small. It's the neatest thing, right? You know that feeling? It's like, oh, everything's so small. I can only imagine what it's like from outer space. So this is not physically, but this is spiritually. The higher you go in prayer, when you look at people, what are you seeing? No longer their bodies, but their souls. You're seeing the soul of the world. You're seeing the purpose of me. You're looking at yourself differently, your relationships differently. You are now looking at things from above, from a higher perspective. You are putting on a different pair of glasses. Now, the goal of prayer is not to stay there, but to do what? Then go down the ladder, re-engage your regular worldview, but do something differently. So that is the going up and the going down. The going up is gaining a different perspective. The going down afterwards is you actually doing something now differently. That's why I always say the good litmus test of a good prayer. Oh, I had a great prayer. You know what the good litmus test of that is? How's the rest of your day going to be different? How's your action? How are you going to be a better you the rest of the day? The real litmus test of a good prayer is not how high you soared during that time, but when you went down the ladder afterwards, what remained of it? Thoughts?
It depends, because you could be praying, just praying to ask for something that you want so badly, or you could be praying to actually pray the whole way you're supposed to pray, which is to give thanks first.
Correct.
So your prayers are actually accepted. Because if you're going to be demanding,
Correct.
that means God is not giving you something that you deserve, quote unquote. We don't deserve anything.
Right.
So you have to first thank, then you request, but then you also have to do what it's called vidui, like the
Confession.
the confession. So that's what you take down with you, the confession part. What did
Well,
I
you've
do
now
wrong?
refined yourself.
Right,
that you.
and that's what I'm going to apply to this world.
So
what I
a
have done.
complete prayer includes all of those parts.
Right.
All of those parts.
Right.
But even the request, this is an interesting point. The ladder, right? There's these, remember Jacob had a ladder? There's different rungs. If you look in many Jewish texts, it discusses that different parts of our prayer are the different rungs of the ladder. Mm-hmm. So right when you wake up, the morning prayers are the lowest rung. And then afterwards, there's the second stage of prayers 2, Shema is 3, and Amidah is the fourth and highest rung. In which part of our prayer do we ask for our needs? The Amidah. Why would that be? Because it's only when you've gone a little bit higher can you better assess who you are and what you really need. That your needs become something clear. Okay.
It could also be the path between Shekinah and Tefra.
Continue.
The ascent and descent is.
Oh, I meant, do you want to?
Well, the Shekinah is with us,
right,
and always with us. So, in a way, that aspect of God is grounded to us. And Tefret, the middle Sephiroth, is also considered heaven. Another name for it is heaven. So it's not that when you pray you go all the way, because that is beyond us.
Right.
But we can get
one step higher.
That we're connecting one above Shekinah. We have left the earthly Shekinah, and she's helped us to see the.
Well, that's what rungs would represent. Rungs would represent going a little bit higher. Do the next paragraph. How this ascent?
This descent is traditionally called prayer. On the most basic level, prayer is turning to God to request one's needs. On a Kabbalistic level, the aim of prayer is to attach the soul to its source and to refine and elevate the crass nature of one's basic desires and passions. These two goals go hand in hand. Through elevation and attachment, ascent, one may refine his own character through a deeper understanding of the purpose.
I like that. So what's another way of understanding going up and going down? When we pray, our the same way our cell phone has to be charged every now and then. Prayer is supposed to be when our neshama, our soul, gets plugged back in. That is the ascent. But again, the goal afterwards is not just that our neshama, our holy part, gets affected, but afterwards it translates into elevating our base, our drives and passions, and that would be going down. So we've had a few different interpretations on up and down. Up and down could be something as simple as us reaching out to God and then the blessings coming down. It could be we had afterwards gaining a higher perspective and then bringing that down to the world. Or we could have the soul going up and then afterwards it translating for us down here. So all of that is alluded to in this dream of Jacob. What's interesting is, as I mentioned, there's 3 patriarchs and each one prayed. And what the Talmud tells us is, from Abraham we learn 1, and is the difference only the time of day? Did they give the exact same prayer, but it was just a different time of day? Is that the only difference? The Talmud makes a big deal out of the fact that we learn these 3 from them. Or would we say each one signified a different type of prayer? Okay. Morning, afternoon, and evening. Okay. Let's take a step back now, and I want to talk just a moment about how we went from biblical prayer to the way it is today. Why don't we begin, Judy, Halacha 1 on page 2. This is from Maimonides, The Laws of Prayer. Maimonides writes this in the 12th century. Here it goes.
Halacha 1. It is a positive Torah commandment to pray every day. As Exodus 23:25 states, you shall serve God, your Lord. Tradition teaches us that this service is prayer. As Deuteronomy 11:13 states, and serve him with all your heart. And our sages said, which is the service of the heart? This is prayer.
Interesting. If someone asks the question, where in the Torah is there an instruction to pray? What's the answer? Brian, where in the Torah does it say you should pray? It says to eat matzah, it says keep Shabbat, it says don't kill, it says love others like yourself. Where in the Torah does it actually say to pray? So in the Talmud, where they have to find a place, they learn it out from the verse that says, Va'avadetem, you should serve God with your heart. What does it mean to serve God with your heart? The truth is, even serve is not a real translation of avodah. What is avodah? We have that word a lot, avodah.
Isn't that love? Isn't avodah and love?
No, ahava is love. Work. It's in Hebrew, if you ask someone, what do you do for a living? You ask them, what is your avodah? So in the so when the Torah says you should work God with your heart, that's the literal meaning. The Talmud sees that as a reference to prayer. But this is very different than the prayer, just verbal marathon. What is prayer according to the Bible? Working with your heart. And I find it interesting, and I've thought about this a lot. Why is it that prayer is avodah? You might have heard there's this famous quote, the Torah rests on 3 things. There's the Torah on one side, acts of kindness on the other side, and avodah, the prayer. What is acts of kindness, not avodah? It takes work to do kindness, doesn't it? Yeah. Is study of Torah not avodah? Why is it that prayer is called avodah? Everyone get prayer is called throughout Torah work.
That's really hard to pray.
I think that's the answer.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be easy.
It's not Torah study. I mean, it's a good discussion. It's intellectually stimulating. It's inspiring. Torah study is not for me. Look, I can only speak personally. For me, Torah study is not that hard. Thank God, acts of kindness. You feel good afterwards. You feel good. You feel that you're a better person. You've made the world a better place. Out of the 3, which one does the Torah call hard work? Prayer.
And it's the most effective one. And because it's so effective is why we have all these Vayetse are coming in and taking our thoughts away. So we disengage between our mind and our heart to make it less effective. Because if everybody would engage the way they're supposed to.
You're saying the Yetzer Hara works overtime when it comes to prayer. Yeah, the best ideas of the day come up. But I think if
some works allowed on the Sabbath.
Oh, this is a different word. This avodah is a different word. On Shabbat, it doesn't say don't do avodah. It says don't do malacha, creative activity. But that's for another discussion. But I think I don't know if people, if we think about this enough, prayer is meant to be hard because I can only speak very honestly. To really pray properly is not saying words. It means to cultivate a real relationship with God. The same way we know that when we love someone, our heart actually feels it, like whatever, we feel something inside, we feel love to a child, we feel, or God forbid, when we're afraid, we feel it. Avoda, serving God with your heart, means actually developing a real relationship with God, that we feel it in our heart. And that is called.
Is that why it says in Psalm 55, I cry out in distress?
Yeah. And it's supposed to be, And that is what prayer was. And therefore, if someone says, where in the Torah does it say pray? Serve God with your heart. How about, keep on reading, Judy? The number
of prayers is not prescribed in the Torah, nor does it prescribe a specific formula for prayer. Also, according to Torah law, there are no fixed times for prayer.
Originally, none of this existed. Now, you might ask, what about Shema? Shema is one type of prayer, but the Shema is not really a prayer. The Shema is actually a declaration of faith. So in biblical times, every day people said the Shema. That was their declaration of faith. And every day people prayed. But how do they pray?
They just
whatever came to mind, whenever it was. That was the way it always was. A person who was eloquent would offer many prayers. If someone couldn't speak well, someone more simple, they would just whatever. The number of prayers was dependent on each person's ability. Some would do it once a day, some several times a day. But the baseline mitzvah was once a day. Same way I call my mom every day, I usually do. Usually. Touch base with God once a day. That was the biblical mitzvah. Everyone would do this facing the Holy Temple. This was the ongoing practice from the times of Moshe Rabbeinu until Ezra, says Maimonides. Ezra's that's why 2,300 years ago. What happened with Ezra Brian? Text Halacha 4. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Jackie.
Jackie, 3 or 4?
4 now.
Okay.
When Israel was exiled in the time of the wicked Nebuchadnezzar, they became interspersed in Persia and Greece and other nations. Children were born to them in these foreign countries, and those children's language was confused. The speech of each and every one was a concoction of many tongues. No one was able to express himself coherently in any one language, but rather in a mixture of languages, as Nehemiah 13:24 states. And their children spoke half in
Ashdodit.
Okay.
I'm not sure what language that is, but in any event, they spoke that.
Ashdodit and did not know how to speak the Jewish language. Rather, they would speak according to the language of various other peoples.
And my guess is not only the language of other peoples, but they probably adopted the prayer styles of other peoples. To which, keep on reading.
Consequently, when someone would pray, he would be limited in his ability to request his needs or to praise the Holy One, blessed in Hebrew, unless other languages were mixed in with it. When Ezra and his court saw this, they established 18 blessings in sequence.
Mm-hmm.
The first 3 blessings are praises of God, and the last 3 are thanksgiving. The intermediate blessings contain requests for all those things that serve as general categories for the desires of each and every person and the needs of the whole community. Thus the prayers could be set in the mouths of everyone. They could learn them quickly, and the prayers of those unable to express themselves would be as complete as the prayers of the most eloquent. It was because of this matter that they established all the blessings and prayers so that they would be ordered in the mouths of all Israel. so that each blessing would be set in the mouth of each person unable to express himself.
Okay, so Maimonides says factor number one is people just didn't have the, inspiration, the poetry. They weren't able to come up with their own prayers anymore. Obviously, some other factors were there as well. What else inspired Ezra to do this? What do you think? What else inspired Ezra to come up with a liturgy for the first time? For the first time, this is the text of prayer. What else?
A general loss of Hebrew skills.
Okay.
Was part of what it says in here.
So loss of Hebrew skills. What else outside of this do you think might have factored into it?
Unity.
Yeah.
The Torah has both.
Right.
The natural laws like don't murder,
Right.
we could not survive, and then they have statute laws that have to be given, and those laws, like traffic lights, form communities.
Right. And it was particularly at this time because Ezra saw the writing on the wall, meaning when the Jews were exiled the first time, they didn't have the wherewithal to keep their faith outside of Israel, outside of Jerusalem, outside of the temple. There was a very, very bad assimilation at that time. When Ezra brought the Jews back in for the second time, not everyone came. A lot of people didn't come. A lot of people didn't come. And he saw right then and there that there needs to be something that unites the Jews everywhere, and we need to find, and prayer was one way of doing it. So ironically, during the Second Temple, they actually both did the offerings and the Amidah.
Really?
Yeah.
Just the Amida?
So the Amidah Ezra did, and Ezra also in his court. It wasn't Ezra in his court also did the blessings before food. Up until that point, it was, thanks God for the delicious coffee. I don't know, whatever you were inspired to say. There was not the Baruch Atah. That all began with Ezra. This is what helped unite the Jewish people.
But
Yes.
Rabbi, if you don't know the way to say it in Hebrew, can you not still say it in whatever language and thank God for whatever it is that you're drinking and eating?
So you mentioned two different things. A is you can, of course, pray the same thing in another language.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's A. And that would fulfill the biblical prayer. But in order to fulfill what came out as the rabbinic prayer, that mitzvah that became part of halacha, for that you do the Amidah. You can do it in any language you want, but that became part and parcel of Judaism. But here's the thing. The goal of Ezra and the goal of all of these people was to enhance. It was to help people fulfill the biblical prayer. It is so ironic, it is so sad how one of the consequences was sadly that people can say the words and not feel any of the feelings in the heart, and that runs contrary to the very purpose of what they were trying to do. They were trying to help people pray better. And that's why they were very reluctant. There was no Siddur yet in the times of Ezra. What does a Siddur mean, by the way?
Order.
Yeah. Like Seder? Siddur means order. It's the order of prayers. They were very reluctant to hand you a book and say, oh yeah, go from page 14 to 40, right? They didn't want it to be a robotic kind of thing. So they started with the Amidah, and people still mix, and over centuries it developed more, but they were always very wary of it getting to a place that we can understand today, very much so. That being said, the words they chose are holy words. It's like they were written with inspiration, with prophecy in a sense. We don't tamper with it the same way one wouldn't tamper with Coca-Cola's secret recipe. That's so this in a holy way. These words are holy and have incredible energy, but the words aren't enough. It has to have the feelings. It has to have the feelings. So the way I see it is almost like there's the words, which are the containers, and then the feelings and thoughts that we put into it, which are the light. Every single day, the containers might be the same, might be similar, but our feelings and thoughts need to be different every single day. If every prayer is the same every single day, then something, and I'm speaking to myself, I'm not preaching, I'm speaking to myself here, then something is amiss. And in fact, the Talmud writes that if prayer is the same every day, then you've missed out. It uses those words. If you didn't make a chidush, if there's nothing new about it, something is wrong. Yeah.
Question, how close is modern Hebrew to biblical Hebrew, like the prayers that would have been established back then, to saying the same in the Hebrew now?
Well, we use the same prayers as back then.
But
So
do the
to someone
words
that
mean
knows
do the
Hebrew
words
well,
mean the same? Did they change?
the root words are the same, but the grammar is a little bit different, and modern Hebrew has many additional words that are not in biblical Hebrew. So when I speak Hebrew to like Israelis, they'll laugh sometimes. You know, it sounds like you're speaking to a Shakespearean, you know, like someone speaking English from a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the root words are the same. The sentence structures are the same.
So a modern person would understand.
Absolutely. And that's why when Israelis, you know, let's say when someone who's familiar with it later in life, let's say, takes to prayer more, becomes more observant, they have a far easier ride doing it because they understand it so quickly.
A husband and wife brought Hebrew to Israel. It was a couple started the whole thing.
Well, it was not a given that when, and not at all.
They brought it.
So, any questions about this up until this point?
I think one thing the book I've read and gave to you,
Yeah,
that when you look at some of the discussions and the meanings behind the individual 18 blessings,
sure.
you really start to look at them differently.
Yeah.
And you really start slowing down and almost not.
Yeah, you need to study them, absolutely, especially the Amidah. There's one part of the prayer that should be studied in depth. It's the Shema and the Amidah. Those are the original. I mean, Shema is the original prayer because it's biblical, but the Amidah is the first of the prayers that was written down by the sages. But just here are a few texts that talk about, you know, when it comes to most mitzvot, okay, kavanah, what does kavanah means intent, is important, but look, if I give tzedakah, if I give charity, what's the mitzvah? Giving the charity or my feelings? Yeah. It's obviously nice if I do it with a smile. It's much of a greater mitzvah the more I put into it, but at the end of the day, the mitzvah happens whether I put the kavanah or not. The same is true with most mitzvot in the Torah. On Yom Kippur, the mitzvah is to fast. Of course, I should think about what fasting is for, but even fasting alone does it. When it comes to prayer, we don't say just saying the words, do it. Because that's not the mitzvah. What is the mitzvah? Serving God with your heart, working with your heart. So that is why these are three important texts. Brian, do them briefly, praying without any feelings of intent.
And the Lord said, because this people has come near, with their mouths and with their lips, they honor me, but their heart they draw away from me, and they fear me, and their fear of me has become a command of people which has been taught.
Their fear for me, their awe of me is like something that's taught. It's something that they got so used to, but it's no longer coming from the heart. This is not from the Talmud. Where's this from? Isaiah. So this actually was even in biblical times where people were bringing offerings or people were saying praises, but it didn't come from the heart. Okay, so that is from Isaiah. The next text is from a commentary.
Prayer without kavanah is like a body without a soul.
Okay.
It's from
Abarbanel, who's one of the medieval commentators. Now, prayer also needs a body. It also needs the words, but the soul is important. And Rabbi Shimon
would say, when you pray, do not make your prayers routine, but an entreaty of mercy and a supplication before the Almighty.
Don't make it routine. Don't make it a checklist item. Don't make it something you have to do. It needs to be full of heart and mercy and supplication before God. So the sages were very wary when they instituted the Amidah about it not being robotic and not being rote. And every year or two, I changed around this class a little bit, but I've done it a few years ago. Even for myself, it's very helpful to remember these ideas, because where did prayer originally begin from? We should never deviate from that, even with everything else. Yes?
So is the reason that you say just stay where you are in the prayer book to get the kavanah, and then it doesn't make a difference if you skip 10, 20 pages of prayers?
That's why I say
you both can't stay where you are and do all the prayers.
That is correct. That is correct.
Rabbi.
Yeah. So yes.
Debbie is asking.
Hi, Debbie.
Should there be angels? Should there be three angels? One from earth going up to renew soul, one angel coming down with answers, and a third angel going up again to make sure communications was clearly understood, sacrifices received, and unification with Hashem.
I need to research how many. The verse says angels, malachim, olim v'yardim. going up and going down. I need to research if there's a number that's mentioned. So with all of this in mind, that prayer has to be heartfelt. I want to go back to where I started today. Yaakov did the third one, right? And I mentioned, the Talmud mentions Abraham in the morning and Isaac in the afternoon and Jacob at night. It's not just 3 times of the day, but it actually is 3 types of prayer. Abraham is morning. Morning is, what does morning seem to denote? Beginning, a sense of excitement, Abraham himself was a revolutionary. It's a prayer that can, in his own life, when did he say the prayer? It was when he got news that he was having a child. So an Abraham prayer is the prayer of the morning, dawn, light, blessing, thankfulness. It's one type of prayer. That is the Amidah. Mincha is afternoon. And it's interesting. Isaac represents afternoon. I'll just do this quickly. There's nothing new about Isaac, no major transition from darkness to light. No light to darkness. Most of the incidents in Isaac's life are just repeats of his father, but he is a link in the chain of the covenant. He joins one generation to another. And what I see that is the prayer in the middle of the afternoon is what?
Continuation.
But it's
A bridge.
It's a bridge between day and night, but it also is the boring part of life. A prayer just, thank God everything's all right. In the middle of the hustle and bustle, nothing new is happening. Just this sense of, God, I love you. This one's for you. In many places, it talks about the beauty of the mincha, because it is one in the middle of the day, and it's not...
It's the hardest thing to do, to stop your day.
Correct, yeah, but it's that idea of, I thank God, just nothing new, just the regular, thanking God from the regular parts of our life.
You don't take things for granted.
And that you don't take things for granted. That would be the mincha, beautifully said. And finally, what do you think Jacob is? What does that represent?
The night.
Which would not only mean physical darkness, but in a place of pain, in a place of fear, in a place where sometimes you even feel abandoned from God, just like Jacob, who was all alone and homeless at night. According to the Midrash, he was just robbed as well. So that's why he had nothing on him. And it's that kind of prayer. So Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are not just 3 times a day of praying, but it also represents a thankfulness, talking to God out of the ordinary, and talking to God out of a sense of fear and wrestling with God, and everything that Jacob represents. All 3 of them would be prayer. And there's some other beautiful texts afterwards that you can read on your own. We're going to stop here because of time.
Where does the, is it a 4th prayer, the prayer before retiring, before going to bed?
So when we say 3 prayers a day, it means 3 Amidah.
3 Amidah.
The before you go to sleep, you say the Shema. It's not considered another prayer.
But you don't just say the Shema, there's a whole.
There's other prayers, but it's
prayer.
not Amidah.
It's
Amidah.
not Amidah.
Correct. Any questions from anyone else? I do suggest the back text is very nice. It's 4 perspectives on prayer as well. Good reading. Any other questions? Yes.
How do you get from standing to prayer? From the very beginning. Like
In Abraham's text.
Yeah.
So this would be what's called an oral tradition. When the verse says he stood in the morning and it doesn't say what he was doing, there was an oral tradition that was passed down that what? He prayed. Now, in order to support the oral tradition, they found another text elsewhere in the Bible where that same word is used right next to the word prayer. Now, you could probably play devil's advocate and tell me, you could do that with any word. Any word in the Torah, you can find a place where it's next to prayer. And that is why we only do those kinds of learnings when there was anyways an oral tradition supporting that idea. Let me explain that idea one last time, just for clarification. One of the ways the Torah was interpreted is what's called the Gzeirah Shavah. 2 words are used in proximity to each other. And just like here it means this, so too there it means that. So too here standing refers to prayer, so too by Abraham. But one of the rules is that you can't do that unless there's a prior oral tradition that shows that idea. Okay. Any other questions? All right, we will hold it here, but I hope that by doing a class like this every now and then, a little different than what we normally do, it helps even in our own life recognize that when we pray, it's a very personal time. Prayer should be different every single time as best we can. It's about the heart, and the definition of someone who can pray well has nothing to do with how well you know Hebrew. It's how well you have the ability to establish a real relationship with God, and that you should be a better person afterwards. We'll hold it here. Thank you for all those tuning in from online, and we will, God willing, be here next week.
So
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.